Hello, everybody. Welcome to session 10. Today, we are going to be focusing on measurement tools, which is going to help us get ready and transition to choosing tools for measurement for our program evaluation. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay, and some of you in emails and feedback and even your blogs for last week talked about how getting into measurement and looking forward to the coming weeks where we're going to dip into quantitative measures in Excel is quite scary and intimidating. And I just want to warn you ahead of time or really reassure you that this is not so scary and we are going to take you through step by step. So not a warning, but an assurance that we will make it. I just want to celebrate another big milestone. All of your logic models have been submitted and they are all graded. So let's party by focusing on measurement. So last week before spring break, we had our blogs in which I asked you to share exciting things and other comments and have a mechanism to support each other. As of now, none of you have taken me up on this opportunity to connect with each other, and I understand you're probably under a lot of stress right now, but I will keep it open just in case for another couple of weeks. Some of you might want to pair up to complete your program evaluation assignments together, etc. We also focused on single system and group research designs before the break. So this week we are really transitioning in from logic models into our final assignment, which is the program evaluation. And so in my feedback on your logic models, I am really challenging you to think about how are you going to measure these outcomes? So you've come up with so many great outcomes. Some of you even did short-term, middle-term, and long-term outcomes, but then you have to think about, okay, how am I going to measure the increases and decreases that are happening amongst my population of focus? In order to do that, I want you to thoroughly review the soft track lesson where we go over measurement. The information is all explained and there's examples given of this. There's an essay question and a chapter overview or review questions, and that's again worth 2 points. And then we have your journal entry this week where we ask you to discuss your evaluation methods or measures. So I want you to go out and look in the literature, go and look at all of your search engines through our U of L library, but also look at places that are obvious like Google Scholar and see what is readily available that will help assist you in measurement. So you're looking specifically for instruments and scales so that you can actually engage in some scoring. And just so you know, I am looking for your critical thinking on this. I'm willing to give you feedback and also consultations as well. In the past, when students feel really stuck, like how do I measure this specific construct? Are there any measures out there? We are more than happy to help you out with a consultation. So we are now going to get into the concepts of reliability and validity, which are two key themes in terms of looking at adequate measurement. So reliability really has to do with consistency across time. So I like to think of an analogy of an apple. If I have the same apple and I weigh it in the morning and then again in the afternoon, it should have the same weight. So that is consistency across time. There's also internal consistency, which is across items, meaning that all the items or questions on the scale should really hang together. There shouldn't be one item that really skews your answer in another direction or maybe tries to measure a different construct. And across researchers. So we should also have what's called inter-rater reliability, meaning that if I administer the scale to somebody or the measurement, and then my research colleague does, we should have a pretty good consistency in terms of asking questions that would not impact the research participant. So that's something that we often work on in research teams, but it often should also be built into the research instrument, like they should test that before publishing it. So this is an example, and you can click the link for more information, which looks at the correlation between two sets of scores of several university students on the Rosenberg Self-Esteem Scale, which was administered 2 times. They're really looking at that test-retest reliability. So they're administering it 1 week apart. So we're looking for a Pearson's R, which is a correlation of positive 0.95. So in general, a test-retest correlation of positive 0.8 or greater is an indicator of good reliability. So this might be a little confusing, but look closely. We're going to look across the x-axis for time 1, y-axis for time 2. And then each one of these dots or pairs of dots is one person. So times where they are 1 dot, that means they hit the exact same score with time 1 and time 2. And ones that are separated might mean that they are hitting a different score. So not as great of test-retest reliability, but we can see that this is pretty good score. So next we're going to look at another construct called split half correlation. And let me just explain for a minute like why we're going over this in terms of looking at measurement, is that for your final program evaluation, we are going to ask you to report on some of these scoring components related to the measures that you select. So we are not actually asking you to administer them on your participants, but if you have a measure that has been tested, has considered to have good validity and reliability, there will be some reporting of scoring, maybe a Pearson's R, for example, that just shows me that, the researcher that developed it has gone through the adequate testing, and you are reporting on that testing as justification for using this measure. Okay, so this another thing that you can look at in terms of justification of using a measure is split half correlation. So this involves splitting items into 2 sets. So let's say I have a 20 item scale, I might split it in 10. So the odds versus evens. And then a score is computed for each set of items. So a score for the odds and the score for the evens. And then the relationship between the 2 sets of scores is examined. So for this one, the Pearson's R for these data is positive 0.88, and a split correlation of 0.8 or greater is generally considered good internal consistency. So we are looking at a chart that shows really good internal consistency here. So we can see the score of the even numbers is hanging well with the score of the odd numbers. Okay. Next, we are getting into validity. So validity refers to how well an instrument measures what it is intended to measure. So for example, I study a lot of, how stress and stigma impact engagement in healthcare among persons living with HIV. So stress and stigma are 2 different constructs. So I need to have measurements that measure stigma and measurements that measure stress, and they should not be conflated with each other. So when looking at face validity, that's really quite straightforward. So if a lay person would look at the questions in your scale, they would say, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Those questions all relate to having stress. So that's just the most basic type of validity. Construct validity relates to an assessment of suitability of the measurements to measure the phenomenon being studied. So if you look at some of the major theoretical domains of stigma, you want to make sure that they are all included in the measurement to make sure it has construct validity. Criterion-related validity involves comparison of test results with the outcome. So that is something that we often look at in terms of, well, this person had, a really high depression score. How did they end up doing in treatment? Did that also match potentially what they talked about in session, for example? So that's the criterion-related validity pieces. That's not often talked about as much as, let's say, face validity or construct validity. Formative validity and program evaluation refers to the assessment of effectiveness of the measure in terms of providing information that can be used to improve specific aspects of the phenomenon. So that's really an assessment of how valid is this measure in terms of me understanding that it will be used to improve what I'm trying to measure. So that kind of is like a match for what you're trying to do in terms of looking at the outcome of your evaluation. And then sampling validity is similar to content validity, and that ensures that the area of coverage of the measure within the research area is vast. So really hitting on all the different domains of the sample. So if you want more information, there are also links in the PowerPoint presentation. So evaluation measures. So we're going to go over process evaluation measures and outcome evaluations. So just a reminder, I've been saying this all semester that most of my students choose not to do process evaluation. They choose to do outcome evaluation, but process evaluation assesses how a program is developed and implemented. And it may evaluate a program structure and operations. So questions may include, how was the program being implemented? So an example of this would be, let's say you are developing a new onboarding program and there are training modules. So you want to really understand in what conditions the program works. So you want to really keep track on who is participating and at what level. So you really want to track things like attendance and participation, and then also acceptability and feasibility to make sure that the program can be replicated. So for those that are interested in doing a process evaluation, it really involves tracking or monitoring the implementation. So you are including things like number of staff trained, educational sessions held, attendees at program events, numbers of meetings, patients receiving services, etc. So it's really counting participation. Evaluation measures related to outcome are a little bit different. So this is what most of my students pursue, is that they look at their logic model and they look at their outcomes and they say, what of these are measurable in terms of what I'm looking to increase, decrease, like increasing levels of well-being, decreasing depression. How are we going to measure that? Let's go out into the literature and find some measurement tools. So that's a type of summative study that investigates whether changes occur in a particular program. And if they do, what extent are they attributed to the actual program and not just to, services as usual. So things we are looking to measure is potentially affect, behavior, learning, environmental conditions, or status change. So I'm going to give you some examples on the next slide of what kinds of outcome measures are available. So this is for substance use disorder treatment intervention. So they would want to know that rates of substance use disorder in the patient population have decreased, rates of hospitalizations and overdoses may have decreased, rates of substance misuse related emergency departments visits decreased. They're also, this is really sort of counting, but rates of binge or heavy drinking that could be measured using different scales, rates of underage drinking, that usually is like frequency and rates. So as you can see, some of this is counting, and then some of this can be measured with a scale. So binge and heavy drinking is often measured by an actual scale that has, validity and reliability and has been tested and normed on different populations. So next week, I want you to take a breath. We will be moving into our quantitative analysis using Excel. Do not worry, we have a lot of helpful tips and videos, and we are here for you all. We will make sure we get you through running the statistical data analysis. So you want to make sure that you have Excel. there is an extra function that we're going to have you download in order to be able to run the data analysis, but I'm going to walk you through each of those steps. Many of you are probably already familiar with Excel, but probably not in the capacity of doing statistical analysis. Many times my students are familiar with it in terms of, let's say, organizing things or tracking things, but you can actually do statistical analysis, some pretty sophisticated ones. We're going to keep it simple using Excel. And a look ahead, our program evaluation is due on April 12th. So that is coming right up. And I am going to be hosting an optional synchronous session on Tuesday the 5th from 7:30 to 8:30 p.m. Eastern time, and to answer all of your questions about the program evaluation. But just bear in mind that everything is building. So the measurement section of your program evaluation, you are really writing in your journal this week. So keep track of everything you're working on. You're going to do fine. And our affirmation during week 10, when I know so many of you are super tired, may feel like giving up, but you really only have 4 weeks left. And many of you will be walking across that graduation stage. So motivation comes easily because I take steps to keep it strong. Today, I know I can stay motivated to continue working towards my goals, to get an MSSW from the Kent School of Social Work. My motivation invigorates me, and I feel strong as I renew my efforts to keep living my dreams. And with that being said, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Reach out to me if you have any consults related to things you might be interested in terms of measurement tools. All right, take care, everybody. Bye.